Every HR team tracks turnover, but do you know how to calculate the other side of that story? Well, today we'll be walking through how to compute employee retention rates, the metric that tells you how well you are keeping your people. Welcome back to HR Analytics and Rewards Lab. On this channel, we simplify HR analytics and rewards for professionals like you. Today we will discuss what retention rate means, the formula used in computing it, how to apply it on Excel, and interpret the results gotten from the data. Retention rate simply measures the percentage of employees who remain in the organization over a specific period. And the formula is simple. Your retention rate is measured as employees at the end of the period. You must have removed your exited employees, subtracting the new hires also during this period. Then you divide the total by the employees at the very beginning of the period and you multiply it by 100. So this is my data to compute retention rate. So I have my serial number on column A, my unique identifier on column B, joining date on column C, exit information on column D, departmental data on column E, my gender data on column F, and grade data on column G. Now recall the formula for computing employee retention rate. We say we want to get employees at the end of the period and we want to remove the new hires that joined within that period, dividing it by the employees that were there at the very beginning. So that we don't compute this data with some employees that joined within the period, we have to highlight those data, especially because your data set might not be as arranged as mine, that is arranged by joining date. It might have been arranged by department or by gender or by grade level. So you want to be able to spot those new hires and expunge them from your data set. So we will use the conditional formatting to do this. So we'll highlight column C, or you just highlight the data on column C and say condition and select the conditional formatting. Highlight cells that are greater than 2024 because we're in 2025. So 2024 December is the last month of the year, and then 31st is the last day, so that you can highlight that. So you can see that it has highlighted it. So if you have 1,000 data, it will just highlight all those that joined within the year so that you don't mistakenly compute it and your retention rate is inflated. So that being said, we want to now know employees at the end of the period. So we want to see how many employees are at the end of the period. Remember, if you highlight like this, you might not capture everyone, or if you have a very large data set, this might not work. So you use your count A formula. Your count A formula counts every data on that particular column. It says we have 17. Now recall that we have exits, 2 exits that have been highlighted. You can also filter your data to capture your exit alone, and you can count them using the count A formula. But in this case, we just have 2. So we say 17 minus 2, which gives us 15. So we know that employee at the end of the period for us is 15. You always start your formula with an equal to sign. So we have 15 here. Now we want to remove the new hires during that period. Remember that we have highlighted them, so it's easy for us to spot. But if you don't have the new hire on a particular sheet, you say, okay, that's fine, just take the 15. But this time around, we have the new hire, so we're going to do this minus 3. And so that will give us 12. So because we are computing it on a single cell, we're going to close this bracket so that it gives us the exact amount, exact data. Then we divide by the employees at the start of the period. So for that, we want to check again how many employees were here at the very beginning. So we come back and say, okay, these are my new hires, so it's excluding them. So all these are employees at the start of the period. It means there were 14 of them, even though some of them reside within the year. So we are saying that, okay, our denominator will now be 14. So we are saying that this formula will now be divided by 14. And we said that it has to be multiplied by 100. So how to do that? You enter and then you select your percentage button, and it shows that we have a retention rate of 86%. So that being said, if your retention rate is greater than 85%, it often means that you have good engagement and leadership stability. However, any retention rate that is lower than 70 may indicate culture issues, pay dissatisfaction, or weak onboarding. So the most important thing for us to know is we need to combine this with our exit data. You use your exit reasons to find patterns, who is leaving, when and why. And you don't just stop here and say, okay, I have my retention rate for 2025 as 86%. You might want to compare it. Are you doing better off or are you doing worse off from prior years? So we go and check, okay, let's see for the last 6 years, how has the retention rates been? So we say, okay, in 2020, let's say we had 100%, and then in 2021 we had 95, and then in 2022, let's say 70, and 2023 65, and 2024 let's say we have 70, and 2025 we just had 86 right now. So this is what our retention trend is showing us. So it's showing us that the company started off on a good note, but somewhere in 2021 there was a dip, and a further dip in 2022, and even worse off in 65. So at this point you shouldn't let your retention rate get to 70%, top more of 65%. But from this data, you can see that retention strategies have now kicked off. It has moved to 70, and then currently is now at 86. So this is something you can present to management to say, okay, all of your retention efforts have been fruitful. You might want to ask yourself, why didn't we include new higher retention rate? The math would not look nice. It would look inflated, because if it can give a false impression that retention has improved. Meanwhile, it is your new hires that are masking your exit. So you can track new hire retention rate differently, and we'll show that in the next slide. Retention rate is meant to measure the organization's ability to retain existing employees. That is those who are or who were already part of the company at the beginning of the period. So when you include new hires in the denominator, you are mixing two different populations. You are mixing people who were supposed to be retained and people who you just hired, who didn't even have a chance to stay or leave. That's why we can remove new hires from the equation to isolate how well the company has held on to its starting employees. However, we can definitely compute new hires retention separately. So the formula for doing that is your new hires who have stayed beyond a defined period. So it can be 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months. So we can say new hires who stayed beyond 6 months divided by the total number of new hires for that particular period multiplied by 100. Okay, so in summary, retention rate is just measuring how well you keep existing employees, only those that were there at the very beginning. This helps you to track organizational stability, whilst your new hire retention rate measures how well your new recruits stay after joining, how long they stay, and it's only your new hires that would be used to compute this. It definitely helps you track onboarding and culture fit. So remember, retention isn't just about staying, it's about staying engaged. Start tracking this monthly or maybe quarterly, and soon you'll begin to see where your real people challenges lie. So if you like what we have just discussed here today, please subscribe to this channel for more HR analytics insights.